In this video, we're going to take a look at 4 different angle pairs that you need to know moving forward in geometry. So let's take a look at the first one here. The first one is vertical angles. Now, I cannot stress enough how important vertical angles are. We are going to see these angles throughout all of geometry. So this one we really need to pay attention to. And really all 4 of these we're going to see again, but vertical angles especially, we're going to run into this one over and over and over again. So if you learn it now, you're going to be in way better shape for moving forward. So vertical angles, what are they? They're angles that are opposite each other when we have 2 lines crossing. So look, we've got angle 1 and angle 3 in red here. Those 2 are vertical. And then angle 2 and angle 4. Now, not only are they vertical, not only are they opposite, but they're also this thing called congruent. Now, congruent is kind of like a fancy way of saying equals. We use equals generally with numbers, like 2 plus 2 equals 4, and we use congruent a lot of times when we're dealing with shapes. If 2 shapes or 2 angles are the same, instead of saying they're equal, we'll just say that they're congruent. So it's the same idea as equal, we just generally use it with angles and shapes and things like that. So in order to say congruent, we add this little fancy line on top of our equal sign. That means this whole thing means congruent. And so what we're saying is if angle 1 was 40 degrees, then I'd also know that angle 3 is 40 degrees, okay? So you can think of it like an equal sign. It acts like an equal sign, but it's just a little bit different in how we draw it. So vertical angles, they're opposite each other, and we also know they're congruent. The second angle pair is adjacent angles, So hopefully you've run into this word adjacent before. If you look real closely, you can see a DJ snuck his way in there. So adjacent angles mean that they are next to each other, or they share a side. So if we look here, angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent angles. Now, do remember that this is one way we can talk about angles. There's a couple different ways we talk about angles. We've talked about using letters. Remember, we use either 1 letter or 3 letters to talk about angles. We can also use numbers. Notice how these numbers are on the inside. Notice there's no degree sign with them. So this would be like angle 1. Let me rewrite that one. Angle 1 and angle 2. Those 2 are different angles inside. Those 2 are adjacent angles. So it's okay. If we have angles that are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 or 7, those are probably talking about angle names rather than number of degrees. So some kids get a little confused there, so I just want to hopefully get that sorted out before we get confused. So we've got vertical angles that are opposite each other. Adjacent angles are next to each other, so they share a side. So we've got 2 more types. We've got complementary angles and supplementary angles. So complementary angles are 2 angles that add together to make 90 degrees. So I've got angle 1 and angle 2 here. And notice that if I add angle 1 with angle 2, I end up making 90 degrees. Together they make 90. A common place where kids get confused here is they think that one of the 2 angles has to be 90 degrees. No, we want them to add up to 90 degrees. So they should each be less than 90 degrees, but together they should make 90 degrees. Now there's a couple ways to remember that complementary goes with 90 and supplementary goes with 180. Spoiler alert, okay? One of the ways is that the complementary angles, see the C here? C comes before S in the alphabet, so 90 comes before 180. That's one way. Another way, sometimes kids like to do this. They turn the C into a 9, and then I have a 90 right here. The C and O turn into a 90. Or my personal favorite way is thinking about the word complementary. It's got that word complement in it, right? And complimenting people is the right thing to do. It makes 90 degrees. Okay, terrible joke. But you get the idea. Complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. Our last angle pair we're covering here is supplementary angles. Supplementary angles are 2 angles that add up to 180 degrees. So angle 1 and angle 2, these 2, notice they add up, that together they end up making a straight line. So 180 degrees, it's halfway around a circle, it ends up going all the way around and making a flat line. So we see these 2, again, neither one of them is 180 on their own, but together they make up 180. So once again, supplementary, you can think about S coming after C, so 180. I guess you could like try to really jimmy this S into an 8, and that, I guess, I don't know, that's a stretch. Hopefully you can just remember complementaries with 90, supplementaries with 180. So let's do a couple practice problems real quick just to make sure we know what we're doing. So if we ask what is vertical with angle ABC? So we've got 3 letters, so we talked about angles with just a number. We also need to talk about angles with 3 letters. This is a place where kids get confused a lot. Well, which one is it? Is it angle A, is it angle B, or angle C? Well, let's sketch out ABC and see which angle shows up. So A to B to C, which angle is that? Well, that's this one right here. So we're always talking about the middle letter as my vertex. It's the one, notice B here is in the corner of my angle. But ABC tells us which one of these angle B's are we talking about. If it only is sitting by itself, you could just use one letter. But here, angle B isn't really clear which one it is. Now, let's find our vertical angle. Our vertical angle should be opposite, so that should be this one right here. And we would call that angle DBE, right? Now, if you wanted to, you could find another name for this. You could also do angle EBD. Notice how B stays in the middle for both of them, EBD and DBE. B stays in the middle, and we're using D and E on either side, so that actually has 2 different names. All right, let's do another one. Same picture, different question. Which angle is adjacent to angle ABC? So actually, there's 2 angles here. The first one would be sharing a side with ABC and kind of coming this way. So angle ABD would share a side with ABC. And you can actually see that in the letters. That is a real rough looking letter B. All right. And then the other one would be on this side, angle CBE. That would also share a side. And once again, you could actually find a second name for each of these angles. But we covered that in the last one, so we'll keep moving here. So either of those angles would be adjacent because CBE and ABD both share a side with ABC. All right, let's do some with numbers. We want to find an angle vertical to angle 1, all the angles vertical to angle 1. Well, angle 1's right here, and one thing you can do actually is you can actually kind of sketch out the lines here. That is a real rough sketch of that line, okay? I'll just actually keep it short. So this is one of the lines. This is another of the lines. What is the angle opposite to angle 1? Well, it's that one over here. It's angle 4, right? So vertical to angle 1. We want to make sure we get our angle sign. That's important. Angle 4. Otherwise, we're just saying the number 4. Adjacent to 6. Well, that means it shares a side. So I could do angle 1, or I could do angle 5. All right, this is a tricky one. Complementary to 4. So I see a 90-degree angle here. Some people will be tempted to say 3 because it's 90, but remember it adds up to 90. So if I take a look here, I've got a 90-degree right there. So angle 4 and angle 5 would make 90 degrees. Now, one thing to look out for, sometimes the IXL does this. They'll say, they'll give you options, and they might give you options of angle 1, 2, 3, and 6, and they won't give you option 5. And you go, well, wait a second, it's angle 5, I know it is. Remember, vertical angles are congruent. So if angle 5 is complementary with angle 4, what else is complementary with 4? Well, angle 2, because angle 2 is the same size as angle 5. So that one's a little bit tricky. So just be on the lookout. Just because they're complementary doesn't mean they're adjacent. All right, well, let's wrap this up with one last example. So let's find some angle pairs that are complementary. So complementary, there's 2 pairs here, but we'll go with 2 and 3. And once again, you could use your vertical angles to do 2 and 5 if you wanted to, but we already talked about that. Let's talk about supplementary. So angle 4 looks like we're going to need angle 4, and we need to add up to be a straight line. So angle 4 and angle 3 would work. You could also do angle 4 and angle 5. Those would also add up to be a straight line. And then vertical, we've got angle 3 and angle 5. So hopefully this is a nice little review of our different angles. Just to sum it all up, let's take a look. Our keyword with vertical is opposite. 2 lines opposite. Adjacent means next to. Complementary means they add to 90, and supplementary means they add to 180. Hopefully that's a nice little review of the different angle pairs. So here's your assignment, IXL C.3. You should be able to get to 90, all right? So it might take a little bit of work, but these angle pairs are really important. So we want to make sure that we do what is necessary to understand how to do things later on in geometry. So have fun and happy solving.